My name's Carrie, and I work for Open Air. I'm the outreach coordinator, and we're so glad to be collaborating with the Clark Fork Coalition. It's a long time project, and it's also really great to celebrate a residency that occurred last year. So I just want to make sure everybody got a chance to see the art. And what we're going to do is we have this little slideshow. I know the gorgeous windows are open and you probably can't see that well, but through the introductions, we're going to just let it play so you can kind of soak up some of the imagery. And we're just going to do a short introduction of all the panelists. I have a few questions prepared. We'll open it for Q&A, probably tie everything up around 7:30. Feel free to get up. We're all about snacks. Everybody should be all about snacks, so feel free to help yourself and make yourself comfortable. So, first, those of you who aren't familiar with Open Air is a place-based art program. So we run residencies for artists of all different sorts, and inevitably, the environment or historical pieces of the places that our artists are in residence come through in their work. So that is going to be one of the intersections that we're going to talk about today. And Clark Fork Coalition was a great site partner. This is all sort of, what we do at Open Air is very process-based. And so we really celebrate the process. We celebrate everybody's experience in the exact place they're in, and we don't have a lot of rules for what artists turn in. But about a year after their residencies, we do connect with the artists and ask them all to submit something that they made or was inspired from their residency. And so what we're enjoying today out in the hall is the culmination of 3 artist residencies. So Eric Jensen, who's a painter and wasn't able to be here tonight, was in residence at Cottonwood Field Station in partnership with Clark Fork Coalition. And then Lane Chapman, who's right here in the stripes, was also with Eric at Cottonwood Field Station. And then Manette Bradford, who's right here, was in residence at Hungry Hill in Butte. And Hungry Hill Art Center in Butte is named after a neighborhood that's also sort of about Hungry Hill, which you can maybe tell us more about it, but it was named after it was an initial mining site a long, long time ago. And so I think probably these fine people will fill us in a little bit more. But this all intersects about environment, and we're so happy to have Brian Chafin, Chafin, thank you, who's the executive director of Clark Fork Coalition here to join us, and he was there when these artists were working. So he'll fill in the stories, and we'll hear a little bit about Clark Fork Coalition's work as well. I want to say thank you to the Open Air staff, especially Lizzie Archer, and also Jess Walters from Clark Fork Coalition. Thanks for all the schlepping and all the support and all the yeses to collaboration. We really love that. And basically this is just to invite dialogue and talk about place and process. So I think what we'll do to start is have each of you introduce yourselves, names and pronouns, maybe your role in the project, how you're affiliated, your artistic medium, and artists, if you can kind of mention the work that you made out there, just so we can kind of visualize that. We'll just go right on down the line, and then Stoney Samso, the executive director of Open Air, will fill in all the pieces that I may have just missed.
Thank you so much. My name is Brian Chaffin. I'm the executive director of the Clark Fork Coalition. Pronouns are he, him. And we've been around, Clark Fork Coalition has been around since 1985, so we're 40 years old this year. Our mission is to protect and restore the Clark Fork River watershed. That includes all its tributaries, including the Flathead, the Bitterroot, the Upper Clark Fork, the Blackfoot. We are a staff of 14. We're based here in Missoula, but we have folks from Helena to Deer Lodge and around the watershed. I want to tell you a little bit about a property that we own in the Upper Clark Fork called the Dry Cottonwood Field Center. And it's a small ranch house attached to 5 acres, but it used to be attached to a 2,300 acre ranch called the Dry Cottonwood Ranch. Dry Cottonwood Ranch was purchased by the Clark Fork Coalition as an example in the cleanup and remediation of contaminated sediments that are across the upper Clark Fork from Butte to where Milltown Dam used to be mainly. And that contamination happened in 1908 when a flood picked up sediments that were in Anaconda, the Butte area, and pushed them all down onto the floodplain. And so much of that is still there, but we purchased this ranch in a way to show local landowners and to demonstrate that remediation could happen, and this is what it could look like, and just to give people and the public a way to buy into that, see that, be a part of it. And then that ranch was later sold, and it is still a working cattle ranch today. So the artists that were able to, Lane and Eric, that were able to stay there for the 5 weeks, got to be on this property and then be a part of that kind of larger ranch that butted up against the river.
Hi everyone. My name is Lane Chapman. Pronouns are she, they. I was a resident of the Clark Fork Coalition, as you've heard. And my medium is printmaking and ceramics, mostly ceramics. What else was the question?
What pieces do you have?
Oh, yes. So I have the pieces on this side of this wall with the 3 ceramic vessels and the print in the center that's embroidered.
Hi, everybody. Okay. Is it on? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Manette Bradford, and I was a visual artist at the in Butte at Hungry Hill, and my pronouns are she, her. My medium is, my background's in sculpture, but I also do painting, printmaking, and it really just depends on the project. And the work that I have in the show are the 2 ceramic sculptures outside Hydra 2 and Our Lady.
Hi guys, nice to see you all this evening. Thanks for joining us on a Monday evening. We've not tested out a Monday event before, and we thought, oh, we're just gonna all have to go to the bar and have a drink and toast to these artists. So thanks for being here. My name's Tony Samso, she, her. I'm the executive director and co-founder with Open Air. I come at this work from being an artist myself, and it's such a treat to see you guys here. It's an honor to work with artists every year in every session, and our artists are in residence for 4 to 6 weeks normally during their residency. And our work, as Carrie mentioned, is place-based, and we're really interested in the interlapping, interwoven connectivity of the complex nature of place, and I think that we'll hear a little bit about that. I know Lane and Manette were considering place deeply, both from ecological perspectives as well as the human perspectives and personal perspectives, and so I'm really excited to hear their thoughts and reflections on their work. We partner with lots of different organizations, and Carrie mentioned we have a focus in maybe ecological focus, historical, cultural. Some of those thematics, or multiple of those thematics, will come up with each of our residency partners. And so Manette was in residence, and she'll talk more about this, but she was in Butte, and kind of Butte as a whole, and Hungry Hill kind of surfaced as really her place because of her ambitions, and I'm excited for her to talk about how she got on, kind of came about making the pieces that are out there, because they're just really incredible. But sometimes we have concrete partners, such as the Clark Fork Coalition, or sometimes it's maybe broader as a place, and resources within that community will kind of bubble up and inspire an artist and drive their residency. So I'm getting a little tangential because there's so much to talk about, but nice to see you all here. I'm excited for this conversation tonight.
I'm actually going to have you hold that mic and start off the next question, because one thing that I wanted to talk about is just a reflection on each of the sites, and though we want to hear from Manette and Lane about their particular sites, I'd love to hear about what you're looking for when you're looking for a collaborating site. And then Brian, I'd like to hear a little bit about like why Clark Fork and Open Air landed on the Cottonwood Field Station too.
Yeah, great question. It can be variable. We've worked with a lot of different partners. Certainly, people's kind of awareness of those sites. I've been aware of the Clark Fork Coalition for quite some time, and we had a former board member actually who was connected with the organization, and so it was something that she brought up actually on their routine. So, and then it's also about relationships. The residency, while it's a program and there's administration involved in setting up the logistics, it's actually about relationships, and it's about people, and it's about supporting creative practice. And what that means is we have to find partners who are receptive and interested and keen on the collaboration. It's got to be a mutual effort. And so we found that with multiple folks with the Clark Fork Coalition, and they were really a treasure to work with. And a lot of our residencies, so there can be logistical circumstances of where do we house them, and what's transportation look like to and from, and what is the site that they'll be in, what's their studio look like. So there's these real practical concerns, and so sometimes that can decide whether or not residencies will continue year after year. Oftentimes though, at least in the spirit of it, we find people wanting to continue to collaborate over and over again.
Thanks, Tony. That's great. You want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I think you hit on one of the key parts was the Dry Cottonwood Field Center just has the space. There's a living space, and there's an open studio with a great set of glass windows that I think you see in a couple of the photographs that the artists had the opportunity to just be in light and sky and the landscape that is the Upper Deer Lodge Valley. But I think the second thing from the Clark Fork Coalition perspective is that we recognize that everybody comes to a place, and everything that's in that place, whether it be contamination or beauty or ecological connectivity, everybody comes to that place differently. And we can talk about the issues that are happening in the Clark Fork Watershed until we're blue in the face, but it takes other media, writing, art, painting, sculpture, to reach a wide group of people in different ways. And so we're really excited about the collaboration and just thrilled at what has come out of it.
I'm going to hand it over to Manette here shortly, but just to follow up on that, another key part is that expert piece. It's really a delight when we can partner with experts in the field. Artists are experts in their field, and they're deeply curious, like insatiably curious, but it's important that they're then connected and brought in to the things that they're curious about. And oftentimes it's artists in their studios on their own, scientists in their laboratories on their own, or out in the field on their own. And so there's really a spirit of how do we bring people together and see what happens when you put different experts next to each other.
And Manette and Lane, you're each going to get this question, but we'll start with Manette. I'm just curious how your partner influenced and shaped the work that you made.
So when I started my residency, or when I was preparing for a residency, I really didn't know what kind of work I was going to make. The Imagine Butte Resource Center, which is where Hungry Hill is housed, has a printmaking studio, and so I thought that intelligent printmaking is one of my mediums, and I thought that I would be making copperplate engravings. So I bought everything I needed, all the materials and the plates and everything for that. And I was given a studio at the Clark Chateau, which was beautiful, but I tend to work really large, and it's an old historic chateau, and it was a small room, and it was I couldn't make a big mess, or I didn't feel like I could. And so I was just sort of like visiting the different sites, and Hungry Hill was where I landed because I felt the greatest sense of freedom there. Was this the question? Why Hungry Hill? And the second day of our orientation, we toured the Continental Pit Mine, and I was able to witness firsthand just the movement of Earth. And I had a different relationship with my subject when I was there, because I had been researching Butte for a few years and making work about Butte, and the subject was so, it was all mediated through like what I was reading. I wasn't having firsthand experience with my subject. When I was in Butte, I was living there and experiencing everything and witnessing everything firsthand, and instead of all of my interests being feeling like historical subjects, they were suddenly contemporary. And so I really wanted to work, I had this somatic understanding of extraction, and I really wanted to work with earth and water and work with my hands, and I just had a different relationship suddenly with the process, and I went in a completely different direction. So, and also Hungry Hill, it's in the basement of the Imagine Butte Resource Center, which is it had been a department store, and the first floor, there was a space that wasn't being used. It was only being used for storage that had been the cafeteria of the department store. And so I just like took over a space in that area and claimed a room as my studio. And Mike, who runs Hungry Hill, was really supportive and great. He said, yeah, that's fine. But just like carving out my own space and going in a completely different direction, and the sense of freedom that I had was why I chose Hungry Hill. But Hungry Hill is a really great organization in Butte because they, I don't know a lot about the name Hungry Hill, like I don't know anything about that history, but I do know that they were founded when the Butte Emergency Food Bank has a program called Empty Bowls, and I think, I could be getting it wrong, but I think that people volunteer their time and they make bowls, they throw them and then sell them, and the proceeds go to supporting the food bank. So this was an organization that was founded to support that, and then it turned into like a larger ceramic studio for the community, and there's like great outreach programs, and kids, school groups come in and work, and there's the veterans group that meets every week in the evenings, and it's just a really great community. It was a wonderful way while I was there too to have firsthand direct experience with community and meet people in person. Yeah,
That's great to
yeah,
hear. Yeah. And then Lane, I'm gonna ask you the same deal. Yeah, how did your place and your site partner, or coalition in this case, shift or shape your work or your experience?
Yeah. So to start, I did this residency after my first year of grad school, and I had a really tough year at grad school, and I felt like I needed to be away from school for, Julia's nodding her head, she knows. I came in as a potter, and I didn't want to make pots, and I was like, I'm a potter, I have no idea what to do now. And getting away from school was really helpful, and because of the Cottonwood site, I was pretty much alone besides Eric, and we saw the ranchers occasionally, and Andy and other people would come through, but we were pretty much alone, and like the closest town I think was either Deer Lodge or Anaconda, and it was like 20 minutes away. So it was really nice to just be alone and just like make whatever came to my head. I'm a huge overthinker, so it was really helpful for me. And so I'm usually a ceramic artist, and because of the studio space that we had, I also felt like I couldn't make a mess. So I did bring clay, but I only worked in printmaking, and I've been learning how to printmake, and I started doing reduction wood blocks, and that's what I started doing when I was there, and I've since finished them. The one hanging is part of that. But I use this residency more as like a research-based residency, just to like collect my thoughts, figure out, I'm going back to my second year of grad school. We have this like halfway point that's pretty important, and I was trying to figure out like, what is my work about? What do I want to make? And I think after reflecting on this residency, it really like came together, because I always wanted to make work about art and the environment, or nature and the environment. But it's such a broad topic that it's hard to kind of narrow down. And I'm usually like place-based, where I make work about my environment. So I make a lot of birds specific to Montana, but since the residency, I make birds specific to that area and that are affected by the contamination. And so I used it really just to like learn about the Clark Fork Coalition, what they do. They have a ton of literature in the site that I read, of like diagrams of the river, showing like where all the contamination is, which I thought was really interesting, because I do try to bring like science into my work. And yeah, I think after reflecting, it just really, it all came together. Like afterwards I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to make work about. So it was really helpful to just like take a step back and just take a summer, make work about whatever I wanted about this residency, and then come back to school and be like, oh, it all makes sense now.
I feel like that theme carries over to a lot of artists in residence. I was an artist in 2020 in residence, and I know that I shot film and planted lots of seeds and then came around about 2 years later or a year and a half later with a finished piece. And that's a lot of what we do, and a lot of, I think, what's excellent with open air is it's process-based, and time is a different thing for all of any process or any phase that you're in. And so that idea of planting seeds and doing a little research and using it as essential, like artist field work is what it is, and then you gather and gather and gather, and then that's why we don't do a show until about a year after. And I'd be curious if you two are still working in your, like, with some of the ideas that were planted probably over a year ago at this point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in grad school, and I'm coming up on my last year, and I'll have my thesis show next spring. And yeah, my entire thesis is inspired by this residency.
Can I jump in there? Because I actually, just reflecting on y'all's residency when y'all were out there, you both were just really active in the field. And while Manette was in Butte and she's talking about Hungry Hill, she also was taking treks down the Clark Fork Watershed and would meet up with Lane. Can you speak to some of those field trips that you took and how that informed?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite things that I had two really impactful experiences during the residency, and one was during orientation when we toured the Continental Pit Mine, and then the last day of my residency, I wanted to see the Anaconda smelter stack up close. And it was, fortunately for me, I think it was Smelterman days, and so I went to the site to try to get closer to the stack, and I couldn't have access. And there was a sign on the chain link fence blocking it off. It was like all these different numbers of these people that worked for ARCO. And so I called random numbers and left messages. Finally got through to a guy, or I left a message, and he called me back a few weeks later, and he said, oh, we don't allow the public to tour the smelter because there's so much, it's not safe for the public, but we do 1 day a year for Smelterman Days to have bus tours that go up there. So that was coincidentally the very last weekend of my residency, and I went to go see the smelter stack up close, and it was incredible and awe-inspiring and terrifying and fascinating.
I bought a ticket to that also because
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought about it, and then it was my last day, and I ended up going to a pond down the street to watch ospreys fish because I'm obsessed with birds, and I was like, this sounds more fun.
Yeah, it does. It's yeah.
Equally awe-inspiring.
Yeah, and when you're there, you have to really live in the moment and sort of follow where your interests lead you. I think it's interesting that you're a ceramic artist and that you went and made prints, and I was going expecting to make prints and make ceramic work.
Along that same line, I know that you two shared a day on the river. Do you want to walk us through what that looked like too?
Yeah, so I contacted, I can't remember, yes, Julia, about wanting to get outside or learn more about what the Clark Fork Coalition does and how they clean up the river. And so the section of river that is in front of that ranch has all been cleaned up. And so Brian and Andy, who works for the Clark Fork Coalition, Deer Lodge, and Julia and a couple other people took me on a kayak or canoe, inflatable kayaks?
We did a lot of craft, I think.
I don't know what it was. And
Like inflatable kayak.
I had no idea what to expect. For some reason, I wore hiking boots on the river. But it was really cool to see, because I had been to the other areas of the river that weren't cleaned up, and to see the difference in that, and to learn about how they rebuild the banks and reestablish the plant matter there. And you were telling me a story about beavers destroying, it's good that they're back, but they're destroying the new vegetation that needs to establish.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard to keep a hungry beaver away from their natural medium. And so there's a navigation, you know, if I can jump in for a second. So the Clark Fork, excuse me, the Dry Cottonwood Ranch, which is right next to the Clark Fork River Ranch, all told, that ranch was about 2,300 acres. When the banks of about 4.3 miles were remediated, there was 436,000 cubic yards of contaminated soils removed from that section, and then backfilled with clean dirt, and then potentially revegetated. But this was really early in the cleanup process along the 120 miles of that reach in the Clark Fork, and so there's a lot of learning that happened. And so I'm really excited that you got to hear the stories that we were telling at that time, and then the discoveries that we had, you know, 5 years on from the remediation, or actually 10 years on from the remediation at this point, and then downstream part of the area that we took out at, which wasn't remediated, so you get to see remediated, newly remediated, and unremediated. That part is now being remediated, and some of the lessons learned of where we are now being put in there. And I don't know how all of that swirling around and translated into some of your process and your art, but I'm sure that there had to be an impact there.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a time I was like wanting to make work about root systems and how, well, kind of more about agriculture because of the ranch that I was on. But yeah, I mean, I think it all kind of related into what I'm making now.
Awesome. So I think that this is a big question, and it doesn't need to be taken seriously, and you all can have your own spin on it. Stoney, I want to hear from you on this too, and Brian, it might be intimidating, but I feel like you have thoughts on this, so I'm just going to go for it. But I'd be curious of all four of your takes on how you see the role of art to engage with environmental issues and the power and how we approach that today, or maybe think of an example, or how it works in relation to your work. Wherever you want to go with that. And if someone is ready to go, jump in, no order.
I think, I don't know if I would say that there's any one specific role that all artists have in relation to this ecological moment that we live in, but I do think that, I mean, there is many ways of engaging with it, as there are ways of making work. But I do think that it's really hard not to engage with it if you are making work now, because these are the conditions that we live in, and it's inescapable. And yeah, I think that, I don't know what else to say. That's
I can riff on that a little bit. I think that art can play a huge role in bringing awareness to these issues, not just environmental, but societal, and just like about equality and human rights and all of that. But just thinking of my work, I have a couple reasons. So one way I think that I make work about the environment as like a way to share my grief of what's happening with everyone, because I know like a ton of us feel that. And I think it's also a way for me to process that grief. But I also think that, like Brian was saying earlier, not like I read science data just for my own research to make work about, but not everyone reads science data sheets or global warming climate reports, and it's not accessible to everyone. Like it's not understandable if you're not in that field. And I think that art can be a way to cross that bridge and make things more palatable for people to understand and to get across. And maybe I can make someone think a little bit more about their environment, or I know I can't change people's minds, but maybe I can spark something of an emotion with work. And I think that art is great for that.
I think a couple of things that come to mind for me. One is about agency. A lot of these topics are challenging. Like experts can be the ones to go in and fix the rivers. I mean, I'm sure there's volunteer days and ways that we can all help, and we can go, clean up and consider our use and what extractive practices our lives may be tied to, and give deeper consideration. But a lot of the times I think that this stuff can feel we feel helpless in it, and where's our agency? And I think the arts have this amazing ability to give our bodies a chance to take action in a meaningful way. I also think because of it, we're talking about this incredible watershed that is right out our back door, home to tons of life forms, seen and unseen. The complexities of those ecosystems are just incredible, and the arts show up in this way that is about curiosity and about learning and about let me know this a little more, let me understand this. And I agree, I think sometimes data sheets can be a challenge, and that's why we find our collaborative partnerships to be so meaningful, because it can be hard to understand maybe the more complex aspects of the research or something, and the arts make it a little more accessible and give people a way in.
I just got really excited about what you just said, because it just made me think about how issues like climate change, mass extinction, they're so, phenomena like that is so large that we can't, when you read data, you can't really take it all in, the magnitude of loss. And when you do, you have these moments of grief that are paralyzing. And so it is a way of managing grief, but also I think that the way that people interact, aside from scientists who read data and understand it that way, the way that we all engage with it are little moments in our lives that are ways that we understand because we experience it firsthand. We can read an article about what's happening, we can read data, but when we notice that there are less insects, or our lilacs are blooming in September, or there's a lot of wildfires this year, things like that affect our daily lives, are how we understand it as reality and real. And I think that art, for me, when I work, I think of it as I'm creating experiences, or you're creating an experience for the viewer, and through creating experiences for people, you're recreating those moments where people have encounters with those larger phenomena. Does that make sense?
I don't have a ton to add, because everything that you've all said has really been powerful and resonated for me, and I think for the Clark Fork Coalition as an organization. The things that I will add, I think first and foremost, are just a thank you. Thanks to Open Air, and thanks to the artists that take on and are interested in residencies like this, because without these relationships and these partnerships, we couldn't reach or connect with the large group of people that we do around these issues. And I think that a couple things resonated distinctly for me was the expression of grief and the agency. I think it goes both ways, and then when we see public art, either scientists or the folks that work at the Clark Fork Coalition see these expressions, these visceral expressions of the contamination or the work or the challenges that we deal with every day, we're relieved. Our grief is in your pieces as well, and our hope and our joy is there as well. So I just really appreciate the work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to jump in on this one because I just spent probably 4 days on this river we talk about. I play on it all the time, and I had a trip canceled because of the lower water levels and because of the higher temperatures, and I know all of these things and I watch all of the news, but when I look at Hydra, there's something about it all being stunned and very still in clay, sitting in that beautiful sculpture in the foyer of the Missoula Library, makes me feel different about it, and maybe makes me see your work a little differently, and it makes me sort of feel about my own playtime and my own choices, and then issues that I know, they're represented so differently in that piece, and I just feel like that all those multiple levels of dialogue are sort of what we need. We need to hit all the different parts of our brain, and so I just thank you, and thanks for making such intentional work. And then also, Stony, how did you let these three artists make such perfect work that melded so well together? Can we just acknowledge the trio of gorgeous work that bring out like the best in each other.
Amazing, yeah. We're missing Eric here today too, because he has such a wonderful voice to add to this, and his beautiful paintings are part of this voice. But yeah, you know, and I think a detail with our program when these folks applied, you know, that they specifically identified where they wanted to be in residency in their application. They had a number of options, and they maybe resoundingly picked the spots that they actually ultimately got placed at. And in our, you know, we asked them, hey, where would you like to be and why? And so we're kind of matchmakers, ultimately is what we are. And it really was a tremendous match. And having these three out there, we don't always, we do special projects, and I would consider this exhibition to be a special project for us. And there was a real synergy to their work, to their voices. You know, I hope after this you go online. We do artist interviews every year with our artists, and they're probably one of my favorite, other than working with the artists and being physically in person, one of my favorite things that comes out of the residencies, because they're these just very thoughtful considerations that the artists each offer us. And each, Lane, Manette, Eric's, each of them was just captivating and beautiful, and it's kind of a deep dive into their thinking, their process, maybe some of their research, some of the resources they were considering. So yeah, just a synergy.
We should mention that if you have friends or in the area, this show is going to move along, and it will be installed at the Butte Silverbow Archives, I think until October 20th. So, and I think there'll be a little bit more work. Is that, am I maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So stick that in the back of your pocket. And then I just wanted maybe one more question, and then we'll open it up to all of you. But I just wanted to acknowledge, and this goes for you too. In your work, you know, I don't know how much extraction or industrial history like makes its way. I think all of you at different levels, but I was just wondering if you could talk about some of the complexities or tensions involved there that we haven't touched on yet. And Brian, feel free as an invitation. We're talking about the Cottonwood Field Station, but I think Clark Fork Watershed is a lot bigger, and there might be some stuff that is relevant to talk about right now. Sure, there's some complexities.
Okay, I can start. This is something I struggle with like every day when I make work, because I'm a ceramic artist, which is like not very eco-friendly, and I work with mined materials. I use glazes, I fire kilns, so I feel like a walking contradiction most days. But there are ways to make it more eco-friendly. And I also, in the grand scheme of the world and climate change, I don't think ceramic artists are adding much. Not to say that and then like not try and do my part, but sometimes I wonder if like what I'm trying to get across is more impactful than the materials that I'm using, because I think they are mostly mined for other industries than ceramics, but. Yeah, it's definitely something I struggle with a lot, because I make like save the environment work with mined materials, and I'm making work about mining. So it's something I have to defend like always. So.
And I think that's sort of, I have a similar relationship with it too, and I think that as an artist who works with materials, or just as a human who lives in a world that, or our society, we use mined resources all the time. It really goes back to maybe acting as a witness and documenting the moment. And you know, in our short lifespans, we probably won't see the full impact of mass extinction, but we're living in it. And so, you know, I think one of the best things, the most hopeful things we can do is just act as a witness and reflect back what we see. I didn't think about extraction or resource extraction until I started. I actually was interested in Butte through its history, the history of the Copper Kings at first, and then the more research I did, the more I found that I was actually interested in the environmental impact primarily. And the tension that I address in both of these pieces in Our Lady was every night I was staying at a bed and breakfast, and every night my window would look out at the Continental Divide, and I would see the sculpture of Our Lady of the Rockies up on the ledge, and then directly below is the Continental Pit Mine. And so there's this sentimentality that Butte has for this sculpture of this female figure and whatever she represents, her symbolism and her, you know, and then this like gaping wound directly below her in the earth, and this continued extraction. So then I was thinking about the tension between like what's valued there and what is you know, the resources are being extracted, and that's what's valued, and what this female figure represents to the contrast between the two. And with Hydra too, if you're all familiar with Hydra in Greek mythology, it was the second labor of Heracles. He had to slay this monster who had, I think, 9 heads, and they kept regenerating. Once one head was severed, one or in another, some certain stories like multiple heads would come back. And so it's just a metaphor for the regeneration of contamination. And I'm really interested in monsters. I've always loved monsters, and I love things that are, I mean, I don't love monstrous things, but I'm fascinated with them, and I'm fascinated with how contamination this condition is monstrous. And so I wanted to show that with what I was thinking.
It makes me kind of go back and think about the function of art and its ability in dealing with complexity in considering mutually exclusive conditions. I mean, what we're talking about right now is kind of like we're complicit in, we're part of, it's part of us. We can't untangle ourselves from our history. And on that point, if you go to Butte and you're considering Butte from the Butte, I mean, Our Lady is also bringing workers jobs and livelihoods and is sustaining families over multiple generations and giving life as it's also taking. And these complexities are unresolvable in many ways. And so I think that the arts have a unique ability to sit with this complexity and give us a place to consider it and put all of its messiness. So I think that's what I want to say.
I think that the tension is very poignant for us as well, because there's an industrial process that led us to where we are today, and there's an industrial process that is potentially leading us back the other way. The restoration and the work that we do in the basin is industrial. It's heavy equipment, it's technology, it's utilizing the human condition and the knowledge that we created over generations to hopefully get back towards a harmony that we once knew with this natural world. And I think that harmony can look like a variety of different things that these artists are helping us put vision to. So I hope that you can continue to do that.
There's one more note that I keep thinking about, and it fits somewhere in here, but it's an appreciation for the Clark Fork Coalition and other organizations, similarly also to the power of the arts. But I'm just thinking about all of our animals, our feathered friends, and our fish, and our insects, and just these creatures. We tend to think about the world through a pretty human lens. We have this kind of very human bias, and I love that the arts and environmental nonprofit organizations and other restoration focused initiatives are thinking about kind of the relationship between the many beings that are part of these worlds.
I have a funny meeting because of that. So at the Coalition's field station, Umble from the bird lab, comes to that's like a base camp for them because they ban birds in the area, and they do like community events where you can go and watch them ban birds and learn about why, because they're studying mining contamination and migration of these birds. But it's funny, so I met one of them later on. I prep birds for the Zoological Museum on campus, and I'm the only non-science person that does that. And I got there because of a friend, and then I met, I think it was Rebecca that worked there, and we had met there. And I think it's just funny how like small the world is, and how just like trying to bridge science and art together. And my bird group that I prep birds with are like super supportive. Like this is kind of morbid, but they let me like take like reference photos, and like I've taken molds of feet and like other things. So it was a cool connection to make, because I don't think I would have made it without that residency. So.
That collection is amazing, and we bring some artists there. You know, what we do is we listen to what they want, and then we try to support them, and sometimes they really want animals like that. And so we got to bring them all to the zoological collection, and that is so cool that you do that way. I was really excited that day. I think we should open it to audience questions. Does anybody have anything they want to start with?
I don't think so. I'm a member of the Open Air Board, and I appreciate your work and your support. But I have a question for Lane and Manette that you may fairly choose not to answer. The question is, so your residency is a year or so past from where we're at now. As you reflect back on your residency, if you were in a room of a new cohort of open air residents, would you be willing to share what you learned about yourself, your art, yourself, especially as you were concerned about bravely before your second year at grad school? Maybe taking a break and they learned that they went back, whatever it is. So I'm just curious what you picked up that might inspire, help, guide incoming residents going forward by yourself and your art form. Or don't answer.
I will attempt. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. I think, and maybe it won't be like super on point, but hopefully it all makes sense. Like I said, I had a rough time at school, and then went there, and it was like a relief to get away and just be somewhere else, and just focus on art, and not have, you know, before I was working and doing all these other things, so I could just focus on art. So it was really nice for that. But I would definitely recommend like not coming in with an idea or a plan or projects in mind. I mean, I did plan on doing prints, but I like ended up just doing research, and like I made a sketchbook and did some paintings. I feel like I've learned so much about myself just through being in grad school. But I think that residency really made me reflect on place a lot. Like I've always been, now that I think back, I've been a place-based artist because I always make work about the environment that I'm in, but I think it really hit home with like, oh, this place is really important, and I don't think that it's being appreciated the way that it can be. And it made me realize like the importance that art could play in like showing that importance. And it really helped me like kind of hone in like what I wanted to make work about, and how, and overall it just helped me like, I feel like be a better artist. And it also, you know, I was in communities that I haven't been in before in Anaconda and Deer Lodge, and it was just really insightful to like, you know, I'm not really around ranchers or ranches because I live in Missoula, so it was really nice to like interact with those communities and those people and just see how they live, and like, you know, we have so many differences, but it was nice to just like, just be around them and be in their community as like an outsider too. I don't know if that answered your question.
I would only add to that I agree with a lot of what Lane said. I would give any artist who's going into the program, I would tell them not to have a plan in place, specific plan in place. But one of the things the biggest things that I took away from the residency was, and something that I knew, but it was a really strong reminder, was how important having firsthand experience with your subject is when you're working on a subject, because all of my, prior to the residency, it had all been academic research. I was just reading and studying anything I could get my hands on, but having firsthand experience with you was, I made much better work, I think. And it was life-changing, I think.
I would say that I probably scold birds now because of that residency, because the birding at that place, incredible. It was amazing.
Manette, do I understand correctly that you're going to have an exhibit at the Montana Museum of Art and Culture?
Yeah. So before the residency, the year prior, I have a body of work that was sponsored by the Montana Art Gallery Directors Association. It was the first work I made when I moved to Montana, and the Montana Museum of Arts and Culture is the 5th stop in 6 shows. So it ends at the Charlie Russell Museum, but it started at Paris Gibson, and it's kind of traveled all over the state. But yeah, I'll be coming back in December for that. I'm really excited.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. We look forward to it.
What's next? That is what's next, but it's also like what's past.
Oh.
Do either of you have a what's next?
So I'm working on, I just finished a residency at the Yellowstone Art Museum in Billings, and I started working on a large piece that I am going to finish the first half of. It's a big modular sculpture, and I'm going to try to finish it and have it and install it at the archives when this show moves to the Silverbow Archives in Butte.
What's next for me is my last year of grad school. My thesis show will be sometime next spring, which I will announce when that is determined. And then I don't know after that. I graduate and I'll figure it out.
Don't plan. We've covered that. Don't plan.
Can we do what's next for open air and the Clark Fork Coalition?
I like it.
Yeah. So one fun detail that wasn't mentioned that has been kind of concurrent with this exhibit is Amanda Philby, who's back in the audience. There she is a wonderful artist and alum with us. We worked together with the with the Trout Unlimited and a couple of other organizations during the Rattlesnake Creek Dam demolition, and so we followed that project for 3 years, and Amanda was one of our artists in residence during that project. But Amanda's a wonderful plein air artist and has been offering plein air classes. And when's your next one? Do you have one more?
Not this coming Thursday, but the next one.
Okay, so
August 7th.
Thank you. So August 7th. So,
I'm going. I'll be there. You should come with me.
You should all come. It's an opportunity to paint along this beautiful watershed and consider place with Amanda, who's a wonderful teacher. You won't be disappointed. One of the things that we really care about is offering free opportunities for our community to connect with art experiences and place-based art experiences. So you're welcome to make a donation if you care to, and you're also welcome to just show up and bring somebody you know who might be interested too. So that's coming up. And then come join us at the Symphony on Friday. First Friday, we have an opening. This year, we're switching it up with our annual fundraiser, and we're doing an artist design mini golf tournament at Fort Missoula in September. So we're super excited about it. It's going to be a hoot and some good old-fashioned competitive fun. You can sign up on our thing over there to keep track of us. But is that? And then also we'll be up in Polson in August for a reading and some live music with some alum up there too. Thanks.
You're going to bring us home.
That sounds great. Well, we are going to continue to protect and restore the Clark Fork River watershed. And we have a lot going on all the time. And the best way to stay in contact with us is to come over and sign up for our e-newsletter. Follow us on social media. We always have volunteer events. On August 16th, I'll plug this one. On August 16th, it's a Saturday. We're going to do a community float from Sharon to Silver Park. We might stop in at the farmers market, where we're trying to get as many people out to just enjoy the watershed and be a part of it together. So that would be really fun. Do that with us. We have a night at the Paddleheads but come visit our website and use that ticket link, and we'll get credit for 100% of your ticket sales for the paddleheads. And the last thing I'll say is it's our 40th anniversary. So at the end of, or the beginning of December 12th, it's a Friday, we're gonna have our big holiday party where we just celebrate 40 years of protecting and restoring the watershed. And it's really fun, and it's at the Wilma, and it's free. Come on down, enjoy some food with us and some celebration. So join our mailing list. You'll get appraised of all the things that are going on at Clark Fork Coalition. And thanks so much, Open Air, for partnering with us. And congratulations to you both.
Thank you. Please visit with everybody and go see the tables and sign up for all the things. And thanks for being here. Happy Monday.